It's all over but the crying. Donald Trump has lost the 2020 presidential election, and Joe Biden is the president-elect. Despite Trump's childish protestations, recounts that cannot change the overall outcome, and dismissed lawsuits, on Wednesday, January 20th, in accordance with the Constitution, Biden will be inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States of America. By the afternoon of Inauguration Day, Trump will be a former president, joining the ranks of living retired presidents like Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. The lives of modern retired presidents vary greatly. Carter spends his time teaching Sunday school and working for Habitat for Humanity. Clinton went into the private sector and continues to be a major figure in the Democratic Party. George W. Bush spent his days leisurely painting and not talking about politics until his recent reemergence. Barack Obama, still relatively young, has been an active president in various campaigns, most notably Biden's successful presidential bid. Their lives vary, but they all have one thing in common. None have suffered anything even resembling legal consequences for anything they might have done in office. None have suffered any long-standing social consequences either, as presidents, even controversial presidents, are rehabilitated in the media and by their own party when the time is right. With this in mind, what, if anything, is going to happen to Donald Trump when he isn't president anymore? We don't know the future, but historical precedent and modern political and social norms can give us some ideas. To understand what might and might not happen to arguably the most flagrantly criminal president in modern American history, we need to look at what happened to his fellow ex-presidents. The past will be our teacher. In 1971, United States military analyst Daniel Ellsberg leaked a Department of Defense study of political and military decisions related to the Vietnam War. Dubbed the Pentagon Papers, this leak proved that the United States presidents from Harry Truman to Lyndon Johnson intentionally broadened the scope of the conflict, contrary to what the public was told. This leak concerned then-President Richard Nixon, whose advisors formed a covert group called the White House Plumbers to put a stop to any future media leaks that might be damaging to the Nixon administration. This group included former CIA and FBI agents. Nixon weaponized his administration and cronies to keep him in power leading up to the 1972 general election, including but not limited to a plan to break into and secretly record the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. In 1972, during the second break-in, 5 of Nixon's cronies were arrested. Concerned that he was about to be found out, Nixon ordered the CIA to put up roadblocks to stop the FBI investigation. Nixon denied involvement and was re-elected in a 1972 massive electoral college landslide, but in the years that followed, the cover-up by Nixon and a weaponized federal government was discovered. Facing impeachment and possible conviction by the Senate, Nixon opted to plan his exit strategy. White House Chief of Staff Alexander Haig told then Vice President Gerald Ford that Nixon's staff believed that the president would resign only if Ford agreed to a full pardon. On August 8, 1974, Nixon resigned, and exactly 1 month later, now President Ford pardoned Nixon. In 1978, Nixon released his memoirs to both critical and financial success, and he earned a living as a public speaker, rehabilitating his image by the mid-1980s as an elder statesman. He lived in relative peace until he passed away at a ripe old age of 81. The corrupt bargain that pardoned him was also rehabilitated as courageous by many in the years that followed Ford's presidency. Could this happen to Donald Trump? And what charges could be brought against him following his term as president? For one, a Department of Justice under the upcoming Biden presidency could easily charge Trump for enriching himself using the office of the presidency. Trump would obviously wish to seek a pardon. So, could this happen? Theoretically, yes, but Trump faces several roadblocks. First, pardons issued by the president apply only to federal law. They have no bearing on civil, state, or local offenses. This means that potential local charges could still affect Trump. Second, in order for this to happen, someone would have to pardon Trump, and his options do not look promising. Trump would have to make a corrupt bargain with Vice President Mike Pence, but Pence may be wary of such a deal. Ford pardoning Nixon was unpopular at the time, and many believe this cost him a chance at another term. Mike Pence is widely believed to be considering running for president in 2024 or 2028 at the latest. He must know that pardoning Trump would damage his image leading into 2024. The only reason Pence would make a deal with Trump to become president is if Pence had no intention of running for elected office in the future and simply wanted to etch his name in history as a president of the United States, even though he would only be president for about 2 months. Trump's only other option for pardoning is Biden. A movement has already begun to persuade Biden to pardon Trump for the good of the nation, but Biden undoubtedly knows this would damage his image among his base. Biden may choose not to direct the Department of Justice to seek charges against Trump, but pardoning him is another story. Such a pardon would almost certainly need to happen early in his presidency, and historically speaking, presidents try to spend their political capital following election victory on their policy goals, not ruin their chances to advance these goals by doing something like that. The only other option is a self-pardon that Trump himself has publicly stated is within his powers. Constitutional scholars, on the other hand, find this claim dubious at best, and at worst, impossible. However, this has never been settled in the courts, and Trump may believe that his newly established Supreme Court justices may side with him should this end up in the highest court in the nation. In short, presidents and former presidents are well insulated from prosecution. In 1994, a former Arkansas state employee named Paula Jones accused then-President Bill Clinton of sexual harassment stemming from an alleged incident in 1991. Clinton attempted to block this civil lawsuit, claiming that a president may not be sued. However, the Supreme Court allowed this lawsuit to proceed. In 1995, Clinton began a sexual relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. Over time, Lewinsky told co-worker Linda Tripp, who then told others. Paula Jones's lawyers learned of this and subpoenaed Lewinsky in hopes of establishing Clinton's pattern of behavior to bolster Jones's case. Clinton reportedly told Lewinsky to be evasive in her questions and arranged a job at Revlon for Lewinsky, perhaps in hopes of buying her silence. Clinton answered questions under oath and lied about his relationship with Lewinsky. Clinton's instructions to Lewinsky about lying under oath constituted obstruction of justice, and Clinton's own lies under oath constituted perjury. Clinton was impeached by the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, but not convicted by the Senate. In January 2001, shortly before leaving office, Clinton reached a deal with prosecutors to avoid indictment. The deal demanded Clinton acknowledge that he misled investigators and agree to a suspension of his law license. Clinton now has immunity from further prosecution. He was vulnerable, so he made a deal to save himself, and prosecutors, eager to save the nation further embarrassment, agreed. Here is how this relates to Donald Trump. President Trump is currently being investigated by the Southern District of New York. Based on what happened to Clinton, it seems possible that Trump could reach a similar deal to avoid prosecution once he is no longer in office. Trump could admit to some wrongdoing and pay some small penalty to avoid something more severe. It can be argued that Trump's alleged misdeeds in office are far greater than Clinton's and that the SDNY might not be as forgiving or as interested in a deal, but we just don't know yet. Bear in mind that even following impeachment, Clinton was a popular figure in U.S. politics. Nevertheless, even with this difference, Trump arranging a deal seems like a potential outcome based on recent history. Unpopular, allegedly criminal former presidents are still former presidents, and are protected often by citing national healing or some other excuse that perpetuates future criminal presidents. In October, shortly before the election, Trump joked that if he lost the presidency, he would leave the country. It did seem like he was just kidding, but sometimes Trump's jokes become not jokes over time. It's a joke until it's not a joke. If Trump is unable to receive a pardon and unable to make a deal with, say, the SDNY, he might consider fleeing as his last resort. Many rich and famous people have continued to have success while living in exile. This is not impossible, but it would be unprecedented. Another highly unlikely but still non-zero possibility is that Trump will quite literally refuse to vacate the White House, prompting either local law enforcement or federal agents to force the transition. Now, that is in the short term. What about long term? If Trump avoids prosecution, as basically every modern American president has, what will he do in the years that follow? One possibility is that he could run for president again in 2024. This would not be unprecedented, as Grover Cleveland had non-consecutive terms. However, this happened for only one president in U.S. history, and it happened in the 19th century. In modern American history, it's unheard of. If Trump were to even attempt to run again in 2024, it would be highly unusual. It would be even more unusual if he were to win, considering he is presently very unpopular with most of the nation. Another possibility is that Trump could avoid prosecution but have one of his children or cronies run in his stead. In fact, if Trump were prosecuted, that might make a different Trump presidency more tempting because Donald Jr. or Ivanka could pardon their father if said prosecution were successful. All of these scenarios seem strange and even bizarre, but so much of the past 4 years have been strange and bizarre. There have been so many instances of people making worst-case scenario predictions, countered by people claiming that such scenarios were alarmist, only to see those scenarios come true. With all of that being said, if history is any guide, nothing will happen to Trump after Inauguration Day 2021. He will make a living as a public speaker, or make his own news organization, or some other business venture, and his unwavering supporters will feed him until the day he dies. MAGA is a cult of strength, but because Trump's loss is erroneously being blamed on fraud, he will maintain his hold over them for some time. Supporting him will be a moral imperative for MAGA. Revenge against the Democrats. That still seems like the most probable outcome. He might even be rehabilitated in the media. All it will take is one unscrupulous producer of a television series, and all of a sudden, Trump is dancing with the stars. The only reason that anything else is even a possibility is because Trump is famously bad at maintaining relationships with his colleagues and cronies. He throws them under the bus, or they write tell-all books about him. Very few former Trump administration officials have positive things to say about the man. Because of this, there is a slim possibility that he will not have the institutional support, or even the support of his party, to protect himself. Yeah, right. Oh well, maybe. Only time will tell.